Okay, that is the top of the hour, and we will get going. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Kevin. We are going to be doing a lot more .NET stuff tonight. There was a request that I had gotten throughout the week to do kind of a informational on Paket as far as a dependency management, and in sort of how it relates to NuGet, and then bringing it all kind of and tying it back to how we're using it in material design in XAML. So for most people who've done a lot of .NET or C# development, a lot of people are probably familiar with NuGet. If you haven't, you should. It is the, let me flip over here. It is the primary way in which .NET developers bring in dependencies. And so when I mean dependencies, I mean somebody else's third-party library of, hey, somebody's got this cool bit of code. I want to use it in my program too. How do I get that installed? Usually you add it as what's called a NuGet package. So this is going to start kind of basic and then bring, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. So a NuGet package itself is just a really fancy zip file. It contains a bunch of DLLs, manifest to sort of tell you about version, author, that kind of thing. And there's a lot of tooling support built around Visual Studio and also the command line to be able to consume these NuGet packages from what's called a NuGet feed. Now, the most common NuGet feed and the one that comes built in for just about everything is NuGet.org. So just about everybody publishes stuff out on there. As you can see, there are only 170,000 different packages that are available to you. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they're all free. It just means that they're being served up here and that you are free to add them and use them. Each package author reserves the right to determine their own licensing model and pricing and that kind of thing. So, but other than that, most of the packages out here are certainly open source because NuGet makes it very easy for open source developers like myself with the material design and XAML library to build up these packages. So when you download a NuGet package into your project, what ends up happening is the tooling goes through and does some magical assembly references into the DLLs that are in the package, so that then you can use the code and away you go. And it also handles versioning and updates and that kind of thing. So that's sort of a brief discussion of NuGet, and I kind of want to disambiguate a couple terms because NuGet can mean sort of a lot of different things depending on who you're talking to. So NuGet can mean the package that you're downloading. It can refer to the tool set, and some people use it as shorthand for referring to NuGet.org. So in an effort to avoid confusion, I'm going to try and make sure that I reference it as NuGet package when we're talking about the actual thing that you download and consume. NuGet CLI when I'm referring to the tool set and sort of the built-in, even the Visual Studio integration for the thing that I use to download the NuGet package. And then hopefully NuGet.org or NuGet feed if we're talking about where is that place where I get it from. So for people who are interested, I'll drop this in the chat. This is the basic docs for NuGet. So just sort of getting you up to speed. To make things a little more confusing, there's actually sort of two main versions-ish of NuGet, specifically the NuGet CLI. So if we look at the actual versioning of the tools, I think we're on like version 4.4, 4.2, something like that. But more importantly, when working with NuGet, there are sort of two main ways of telling your project, hey, I want to consume this other library. So one is with a packages config file. So if you've created a WPF application and you're using .NET Framework, this is what you have. You end up with a packages config file. So, and actually, let me grab it right here. I've got a small example. Bring this guy over here. So, and be big. So, right here in this date picker Persian calendar project, I have a packages config. This is using the old style NuGet reference, and it's directly just lists, hey, here are the packages I'm consuming. One's called Material Design Themes, and here are the version, and this is the target framework that I'm looking to download it for, right? And for up until just, was it 2 weeks ago, this was the only option for people building WPF or full framework applications. With the release of .NET Core 3, WPF applications now have access to package reference. Now, this has been available for anybody doing .NET Core development for a little while. And now with .NET Core 3, this comes to pretty much everybody. Loose wording there, but most projects have access to this package reference now, so that you can go through and then rather than having this separate file that you have magically added to your project, inside of your project file itself, oh, and this one's not actually even referencing it. Let's see here. I probably should have checked them to make sure that these things were actually adding it. So let's add one real quick. So browse, material design themes. Great, that one. I've installed it a couple times. So if I go out to NuGet.org, I'm going to install version 2.6.0, and away it goes. Thinking. Downloads the project, or downloads the manifest for the project, verifies all the version numbers, and brings it in. Okay, so it confirms these are the versions that I want. Great. Pulls everything in. Go ahead and install it. So what this will end up doing is inside of our CS proj, rather than having a separate file like this packages config to keep track of our package, it then references material design themes directly in here. Similar information in what it's looking for. It has the package identifier as well as the version. It doesn't necessarily have the target framework here because it can infer it from other project properties such as target framework or target frameworks, plural. So when people talk about referencing NuGet packages, it's important to note that there are two different ways of doing it. And it really depends on, are we talking about an older project or something newer? And again, when I say newer for WPF, we're talking weeks old, not months old, unless somebody was on a beta build. So then that brings us to, okay, if this is what NuGet is, what is Paket and why are we using it in the material design library? So Paket is sort of the only other alternative to NuGet that's out on the block. It is an alternative to NuGet because there are, with the NuGet packages, there are some limitations and things that you take. Now, it's important to note that when Paket was created, it was created before the package reference version of the NuGet tooling existed. So it was back in the packages config days when this project first got rolling. And so some of the problems that it references and that it was designed to solve have been somewhat mitigated with the new project reference. Not all. In fact, there's still compelling reasons why people still insist on using Paket, and it's used by quite a few large organizations. So don't shy away from it thinking that this is just some weird third-party library. It's actually fairly common and fairly popular to use. So Paket takes a slightly different view of how to manage your dependencies. So with Paket, you end up specifying your dependencies across two files. You go through and declare your Paket dependencies, like what they show here, with various, in this case, it's referencing several different NuGet packages, and some of these it's specifically calling out a version, some people it's targeting particular frameworks. And then inside of each of your individual projects, the projects then say, here is the dependency that I need. Now you'll note in the Paket references, this is per project. The Paket dependencies, you can think of this as per solution or per repository, depending on how you've got your stuff set up. Whereas the Paket references just identify, okay, which of those dependencies do I need? So for each of these, what ends up happening is it goes and looks these up, and so this ends up giving you a full solution. as far as one place to effectively manage all of my packet versions. So with NuGet, you end up basically managing everything on a per project level. There's no concept of a solution level NuGet. Now, within inside of Visual Studio, you can certainly open up the package manager at the solution level. So you can right click on your solution and hit manage packages for solution. But ultimately, when this guy fires up, it's still managing the NuGet packages on a per project basis. So for example, you pick on one of these guys here. All it does is list the projects and the version that this is used in each project. So even though it's solution level, that's really just a tooling abstraction over the idea that NuGet packages are all very much individually project based. And then you run into this problem of, well, what happens if I've got stuff on different versions? Whereas Paket takes the approach of, I'm going to have one spot where I list all of my NuGet packages, one spot where I declare all of the versions, and then these guys are just going to declare what I use. Okay? The other thing that Paket gives you, and I guess sort of the two big advantages to it, come when it dealing with what's called transitive references. So what does that mean? So back in the example I had over here, where we had this guy, you'll note when I installed this package, it just pulled down and referenced Material Design Themes version 2.6.0. I haven't referenced the Material Design Colors library, which is a dependency of this library here. So when it goes to install, NuGet has to figure out, okay, which version of Material Design Colors am I actually going to put as part of this assembly that I'm going to compile with. And for NuGet, you don't get a lot of control over this. In packages config, it ends up actually listing out every version that's going to be installed. But again, you only get some level of control over these. So if you say, no, I don't actually want you to pick the version of Material Design Colors, you have to go through each of those dependencies and actually explicitly reference each of those at the version that you want. So in this case, with package references, you would end up doing something, let's see, Material Design Colors, and I want version, I think 121 is gonna. I don't know if that's actually. I don't know if that's a legit one. But this then effectively tells it, no, don't resolve the version that you think I want. Use this explicit version. So when NuGet goes and resolves, it's going to end up picking the lowest allowed version that's acceptable across all of your dependencies. So say you've got 3 different libraries. They're all referencing, say, newtonsoft.json, and one wants version 12, one wants 12.1, one wants 12.2. Well, it's going to go, well, okay, guys, the minimum acceptable one that's available is 12.2 because that's, what dependency A wants. So that's the version we're going to bring in because ultimately you can only have one version loaded up. And so I believe I've got this guy here. So NuGet package dependencies. So if you are interested in diving into the deep details of how this works, this is how, or this guy here describes how NuGet determines the dependency resolution and how things get picked and which versions it wants. Now, Paket takes a very different approach to this, and this really comes down to a philosophical difference, not really a technical reason. Now, some people will make technical arguments, but it really is a philosophical difference between these. So on Paket itself, and they actually somewhat go into this on their frequently asked questions of, why should I use Paket? What's so great about it over NuGet? And again, you'll note that a lot of this Paket documentation is written for the packages config stuff and not for the new project references. So just keep that in mind when you are reading it, and understand that there are newer versions, but not all of these are done. So what Paket ends up doing is it gives you a lot more control over saying, okay, what if I'm going to resolve these different dependencies, how am I going to resolve them? And so they actually will give you a little bit more control over the algorithm. In fact, just being able to resolve, they have a very simple option of saying, okay, do I want the minimum version that's allowed, or maybe I want the maximum version of, I want to grab, say the latest patch fix because, I don't know, I may want those bug fixes and security updates that the library author is giving to me. I'm just going to keep pasting links as I go. And so Paket actually gives you that level of control so that you can actually be explicit. The whole idea with Paket and the whole reason why it came about is basically wanting to remove uncertainty and trying to make sure that builds are very deterministic, so that I know that build A with a particular configuration is always going to get me the same dependencies and it's going to build the same way. And it gets a lot more complicated, and again, you can dive through the documentation here to try and figure out, okay, how do I get particular versions, and which versions are allowed to update, and what versions are they allowed to update to. I know there was one project I was on, we had a NuGet dependency that we couldn't update, despite the fact that NuGet saw that it was a valid upgrade path. There was breaking changes in it because we had multiple of the libraries that needed a very specific version. And so ultimately, Paket would have been a nice solution for it. We ended up just pinning it with NuGet to lock it in place. The other thing that Paket does, and they don't necessarily do, in my mind, a great job of showing it off here. A lot of this stuff is about how do I manage my dependencies. But for material design in Xaml, one of the things that we're leveraging it for is it actually allows sources beyond just NuGet feeds. So NuGet, you get NuGet feeds, and that's your only choice, right? And they could be self-hosted ones. They could be on MyGet. They could be an Azure DevOps artifacts feed. All of those things are valid. But ultimately, all of those feeds are still just serving up NuGet packages. Paket actually expands that a little bit further. So on, let me grab it real quick because proof is in the pudding. So on material design in XAML, you can actually go through and just pull in individual files. So you'll note these ones here are all NuGet dependencies that we're bringing in and saying, here's some version limitations, et cetera, of everything we want. But then these guys down here are just straight file references. We're effectively pulling in individual files out of a repo at a particular commit and saying, here's the repo, here's the commit, it's on GitHub, this is the path into the individual file, bring that one in for me. And so ultimately, when these guys get brought in, it's now pulling in files and effectively file linking them in for us so that we can have dependencies beyond just NuGets. So this is one of the reasons why it's a little bit difficult for us to extract Paket out of this project and get rid of it, because NuGet doesn't have an equivalent. Now, we could always go through, download, a raw copy of each of these projects, bring them in, and that technically works. I mean, that would be an option. However, leaving these back in the main repository and just simply updating the commit hash when there's, say, a newer version of the file that we want is an incredibly good asset. Now, with that said, the other thing that's not really reflected here is the extra complexity that comes with Paket. So Paket is fairly well documented. There's a lot of stuff here. But part of the issue is the dependency workflow that all of this goes through isn't really exposed very well. So the NuGet package and the tool chain is all built around, okay, how do I go through and make the appropriate modifications, or when I go to do my builds, the package reference, how does that work? That's all baked into the Visual Studio toolchain and isn't really set up for people to extend it. So Paket has kind of had to work around that limitation in order to be able to bring stuff in. What they end up doing is creating their own targets file and referencing that inside of your project so that they can modify it and update it to point to the appropriate locations where it goes. So it most of the time should just work, right? When you clone the solution, you should be able to fire it up, press F5. Everything should just flow right through the MS build pipeline. You should compile material design in XAML. Everything works. With that said, because this isn't necessarily baked in as a first-class citizen, there is problems, especially when changing branches. A lot of times you end up having to come through and run a packet restore to effectively reset some of these dependencies to what they should be. So there is a limitation, and I would say a cognitive extra load that comes with Packet, because you now have to understand a second set of tools beyond just the regular NuGet tools that a lot of people may be used to and worth doing. So I guess that's sort of my 10,000 foot view of Packet versus NuGet. From my own personal perspective, I don't use Packet on many projects. Most of the time I find NuGet is just fine. I can handle my resolutions right in either my packages config or my CS proj, and that's good enough for what I am needing to do. Again, with that said, Packet does have several perks and additional features that don't exist elsewhere. It lets you better manage your dependencies to make sure that you get the exact versions that you're looking for. Again, with NuGet, you can always just pin versions, especially with package references, where you can just explicitly say, hey, this is the exact version of a dependency I want. Please use this. It does mean that it's now in your hands to do it. Packet is pretty good about going through, and they've got commands like show outdated, where it'll actually walk your dependency graph and show you every package in your dependency graph that has an update, and you can choose to take those updates as you want and update them, and it handles spreading all of that out across your projects. You don't have to worry about projects that end up on different versions of a NuGet. It handles making sure that everybody's in sync because you only manage your versions in one place. So there are a lot of perks for it, but I would say that there's also an additional overhead in learning if you decide to go down that route and use it. So I think that covers it. Magnus, if you were watching, hopefully that answers your questions. If you've got more questions or you're interested in hearing more on Packet, certainly shoot me a message and let me know. I'm happy to dive into it. I will say too, when I came onto the material design project, Packet was done long before I got onto it. So it was just something that has stuck around and stayed. I know some people have advocated switching to NuGet. Again, we can't get away from all of the dependencies because we do rely on the exact file references for some of these guys. I mean, there are ways around it. But ultimately, this is the way that it's currently working. So maybe at some point I'll revisit the idea of going back to NuGet just so that people who want to contribute to the library, there's less of an issue when they try to clone and change branches and rebase and that sort of thing. But for now, I think this is what we're going to be stuck doing. Okay. So I think that handles Packet unless people have other questions. So unless there are questions, comments of things people are hoping to see, my plan for tonight, let me pull this guy over here, was to head back over to the 3.0 release that I was working on previously. So this weekend, through some weird interesting events, actually had time to code for fun, which was awesome. And so I went through and I believe I resolved the expander issue that was in there before. So part of the issue with the expander is previously the content got to be king. And if the content said I want to be 3,000 pixels tall, it got to be 3,000 pixels tall regardless of how tall the container was, which I believe was causing several downstream bugs with either in this case, the bug had to do with scroll bars inside of the content because they were never showing up because the content thought it was always big enough, despite the fact that it really shouldn't have been. So getting that changed out, and actually I'll flip back here and I'll just show that one off real quick. Let's just close this solution because I'm tired of accidentally opening the wrong one. We will go back here. And let's do expander. So for anybody who's familiar with what I normally been doing, I have turned off ReSharper tonight, sort of testing and seeing how long I can last without my beloved ReSharper. The extra load on the machine was quite significant, and I'm hoping this keeps me more productive. So down here on the expander, and this is where things got interesting. So Down here, we used to have a stack panel. Now, the big issue with stack panels is stack panels take all of their children and effectively, in order to do the stacking, basically says, okay, we'll assume a vertical stack panel. How tall do you want to be? Okay, you get that much height, and then the next guy, how tall do you want to be? And the stack panel just effectively keeps growing and doesn't stop when it reaches the bottom of its container, which is what was ending up happening here. The problem is we had a lot of assumptions on how to do this, and then the animation for the expander was wanting to know, or it was using the fact that the stack panel would always size out to its children to be able to animate the height of it, bringing the children into view, which now became a problem because that let the children drive how tall the expander could be, rather than the expander stopping its size once it's filled up its content. So what I ended up doing is adding in this layout transform. Now previously what was happening is there was a binding that bound the height property, and it used the opacity as effectively a percentage. So as the thing faded in, that would effectively be animating from 0 to 1. And so it would use that as a percentage to say, okay, that's how much of the height is going to be shown. So as these storyboards ran and animated the opacity, it effectively made the stack panel grow taller and taller up to its total height. Again, the problem was that meant that the content got to be king, and that's not what we wanted. So in here, what we ended up doing is flipping that on its head and saying, no, we're going to actually lock it in place. So the stack panel became a grid, because the grid will now stop when it reaches the appropriate size. There's potentially some reduction that could happen here with this border as well. I didn't look into it, mostly because of this horizontal and vertical alignment stuff. I didn't want to accidentally break that in the process. But then it applies a layout transform to effectively, rather than animating the height, because now you have a chicken and the egg problem. If you use the height to determine how big to make it, and you're animating the height, you're now always going to be at 0 because it's never going to grow. So instead, we allow this guy to get set, and then we apply a layout transform that says, okay, as this thing changes, we're going to adjust the scale of our layout transform so that this thing grows. So for those people who are really familiar with the animations, this will look slightly different because now it's going to be a scale out animation rather than effectively a slide looking animation. But this was the only way I could figure out in order to get that same smooth scroll kind of opening effect to them without breaking the sizing of the expander. So I think that's where we had left off before, where last week I noticed that after merging in some of the expander changes, that was broken, just due to the fact that the way the scroll viewer was implemented was effectively changing the sizing of this, which wasn't quite what we were looking for. So I believe that is better now. And so if you grab the latest 3.0 NuGet package, that should be in and done. Again, I really do appreciate everybody who pulls those down and tests them. If you pull it down and test it and everything's working, just drop me a line in Gitter. It's always good to hear when people have tested it. Otherwise, I'm kind of guessing based on like NuGet download numbers of, has this actually been tested, or are these download numbers, just the various indexing bots and whatnot pulling it? So there's all of that. The other wonderful thing is that has meant that we are down to almost no pull requests left in the 3.0 release. So the last one that is in there is this typography update, which I think we're going to address tonight. And then finally, I pinned this breaking issue to the top of the issues list because this is all of the breaking changes that are coming in 3.0. So for anybody who is tracking and watching all of these are all of the areas where you might need to go and make changes in your app. Now, some of these I don't think people are using. The obsolete methods, hopefully if people have been updating consistently, if you updated to 2.6.0, you should be seeing any palette helper problems. So be warned that if you're still using the old theming stuff, those APIs are going away. There were some obsolete members in Smart Hint and Dialog closing event args. These didn't do anything. The functionality behind them has long since been removed, and so I'm guessing if you were using them, they weren't doing anything to begin with. Just delete the code. Wasn't helping you anyway. There are a couple changes to vertical alignment too for cards and flippers. These guys were defaulting to top, and they are now defaulting to stretch. Since these are content controls, this brings them more in line with how most WPF controls work, effectively telling them to fill their container space rather than just always docking to the top, which always caused some confusion for people. There was a number of questions that I've answered over the months of just people saying, hey, I dropped this in, it didn't align properly. It's like, well, yeah, the default is weird, and change that out. The other thing in here as well, if you were using the material design data grid combo box column, drop the word material off of it. So it's now just data grid combo box column. Because in XAML you have to fully qualify stuff anyway, the material isn't really adding anything, since in your code it's going to say like material design : data grid combo box. It felt like having material as part of the class name was way too much. So a little less typing. I think this helps make the API somewhat match what people who do WPF expect a little bit more. The other one that I fixed this weekend was the vertical alignment of the label, text block, and text box. So this one's actually a little bit tricky that's worth knowing about. So this was a beautiful example of the problem. So, not what I wanted. Close that, please. We have a label, a text block, and a text box, just in a horizontal stack panel. And as you can see, when the stack panel has enough height, these things just align all over the place willy-nilly, it looks like. So there was a couple things going on here that are worth noting. So label has some default padding to begin with. So if you use a label over a text block, just be aware that label does come with some built-in padding, and that's probably the first property you want to play with if things aren't aligning properly. Text block is a little difficult. So there are no implicit styles on text block because this is the fundamental sort of base control that gets used anywhere where you need to render text. So any sort of things like list box, tree views, label itself actually has an internal text block as its default template for displaying text. All of these types of things where content controls end up displaying text, those all end up as text blocks. So if you were to put an implicit style on text block and an implicit style on label, you'll effectively end up applying the same thing twice because one of these exists inside of this. The other thing is the text box itself. It also has some internal padding that's set up to deal with the fact that we have like this underline look. And so because both of these guys sort of have some built-in padding that's necessary for the material design styles, what I ended up doing is creating a new style that's material design text block. So it's not an implicit style. If you want it, you have to reference it explicitly. But then it'll let you do this. So if you want all three of these controls to line up correctly, the text block you need to add an explicit style to. You could also set the top and bottom padding to 4, and that'll get you into the correct space as well. And then all of these go through and now line up vertically. So it takes a little work if you want to get things lined up, but at least now the built-in padding on label and the internal padding on text block are now equal. And so if there's things that seem like they've shifted a few pixels up or down in a direction, that is why. There are breaking changes around the internal padding and margin on these guys. Again, all of these changes, you should be able to explicitly override the properties. It's just a problem if you were depending on those defaults. So, but this now brings this in line, and I'm leaving this issue open for now because I'm not convinced that there won't be more items to add to it. But once the 3.0 release is ready to go, this guy's going to get closed, and all of these are basically going to become release notes in here as far as what needs to change. Ooh, 1 second. Too much talking, not enough Mountain Dew. Okay, so and there's several bugs in here that I've left in to try and debug. So Magnus, if you're watching, some of these ones like the dialogue ones, I tried a couple times to reproduce it, and I am struggling to get it. So some of these may get punted out of the release. With that being said, this one I keep trying to reproduce on my Surface Go. I've seen this bug happen a couple times, but I've never been able to catch it to understand exactly what's triggering it, and it's been really frustrating. Because it's not consistent for me of when it triggers, and I don't know what the cause is. So leaving it there for now. Couple bugs in here that are worth looking at, and I'm trying to decide. Some of these I was tempted to go and log. This guy here, probably worth coming back to. The one I was interested in taking a look at tonight is this typography update one. So this is one that was done a while back, back when Google introduced the new material design spec. And initially, there's not necessarily a problem with the way this is done here. The only issue I have is this. Let's see, text block conflicts. That's okay. Is this guy here ultimately doubles over the number of styles that exist, and I don't think we want that. The expectation for this library is that as Google's material design improves, that is the target design, and so this library should update to match it. So if you are stuck and insisting on the old version of material design, you're probably going to end up getting stuck on an old version of this library as well, because it's not going to be reasonable to try and support old versions of the material design spec. And for the most part, Google isn't implementing breaking changes, or at least not anything of major significance. So for at least most of this typography stuff, it really just came down to font sizes and a few key differences for like the enabled states. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to take this guy. I think I'm going to just rebase it onto master, and then we'll check it out and work through these issues. And I think what we'll end up doing is reducing the styles back down to so we don't have this 2 in any of the names, and just mostly bring in the new ones wholesale. But I want to take a look at exactly what the differences are to make sure that we don't accidentally lose anything in the process. So everybody's favorite Git tool, GetCracking, because GetCracking is awesome. Okay, and let's be bigger, GetCracking. Be bigger. Very big. Very, very big. Okay, so we're going to close that for the moment. And I'm very happy. I've gotten the number of pull requests almost down into single digits on this library. I'm really, really trying to get these down. I appreciate everybody who's contributed, and I somewhat anticipate getting a few more as Hacktoberfest starts here in a little bit. So I am very conscious of this, and I don't, especially when people contribute, I don't want you to feel like your pull requests get put to the side. Some of these older ones I've been slowly trying to catch up on and clear out. So please know that I do appreciate it, and I'm not ignoring them. I am just trying to make sure that I get in as much as I can and make sure everything gets reviewed. Okay, and I already forgot my, let's see, pull request 1058. So not the oldest one, but we're getting close. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do in the interest of not having Visual Studio freak out is I'm just going to close it down, because sometimes Visual Studio loses its mind when you start moving branches around and changing the files out from under it. It's not always happy with you. Like I said, I think I'm just going to get this rebased onto master, since there really is only the, according to GitHub, only the one conflict. And I think that conflict was probably me this weekend. So hopefully everything's fresh in my mind. So rebase typography onto master. And there are merge conflicts. Yep, the one. Let's take a look at what they are. Okay, so this is the new material design text block that I had put in. So I think what we're going to do is this, is I'm going to take these changes here. Whoops. Undo, undo. Got to do these in order. Put in a little white space there. And then I think I just take this one and this one. I think that gets me into the right state. Because this guy here, here. Oh, I do want to grab this based on as well. Which means I want this. Actually, I think that, hold on. I think we can cheat this a little bit because this is really just bringing in the comment, material design caption text block, material design caption text block, which means I should be able to do this and this. So basically the old stuff with just this comment added from that one. Great. Save changes. And continue rebase. And poof, we are now in the latest state. That was a little too easy. Okay, we'll relaunch Visual Studio and GetCracking. Thanks, we'll come back to you later. For those people who are interested, next week my plan is to do a bit of an introduction for people who are interested in learning Git and going through and contributing to open source projects. Just with it being Hacktoberfest, it seemed like good timing to go through and kind of cover some of the basics of branching, rebasing, merging, pull request, all of that fun jazz. So next week, probably going to spend the first, I don't know, half hour, depends on how things go. Kind of just going over GitHub and that whole interaction there. So specifically with focused for introduction level stuff. So if anybody is interested in getting involved in Hacktoberfest and unsure how to start, hopefully this will give you all the information you need to get going. So just with that on the horizon. So let's fire the demo up. The typography pull request modified the page of the demo app to show off the new styles in comparison to the old ones. Again, my plan is to just effectively merge these and take all of the new ones, but using the old style names. But I want to just visually take a quick peek at them and verify that I understand what the differences are. Just looking at the pull request, most of it look like some style triggers for like disabled states, and then also some like font size changes, which isn't bad. But it does mean if you're using them when you take this update, there may be some of your GUI bits may not look quite right. Again, because this is a major version release, I'm taking this opportunity to put in all of the breaking changes that I've been pushing off for a while. So this is definitely a breaking change, and so waiting to push this through until now has been desirable. But hopefully if I can get all of these pull requests under control, then it'll come down to just slowly slogging through the issue backlog, because I know there's plenty of them in there, and I do appreciate everybody who especially has taken the time to write up good issues. I definitely try to prioritize them, and I've been trying to stay on top of the new ones as they come in to make sure that they are appropriately triaged and labeled and that sort of thing. So anything without a label probably means I haven't triaged it yet. If it has a label, it means I looked at it at least once. Come on, Visual Studio, you can do it. You can do it. Thinking. There we go. Okay, so typography. I should know where this is on my own demo app. Menus, toolbars, trees, list colors, like a typography. Right in front of my face and I can't see it. Okay, so we got a bunch here. Let's just make this guy bigger. So let's see. So there's a little bit of a color change on some of these as well. So light 112, light 96. So design headline text block. Design headline text block. Whew. Whew, these sizes are huge in comparison. That is interesting. So some of these are not direct comparisons. So design display 4, 3, 2, 1. So some of these are just are actual renames of it. Interesting. Okay. Because I'm very okay with the way all of these look. This looks like button text block, button text block. These all look basically in line with each other of what I would expect. And this is the basically the same one here. Disabled, disabled. Showing each of those off. The thing that is missing here. Why do you guys not... Oh, is it just way to the right? It's way to the right. That's what it is. Got it. So yeah, so this is for the hyperlink inside. So if you go and attach a hyperlink, same type of thing. I assume this is a disabled hyperlink. It's enabled false. Got it. Great. Yeah, so I think what we're going to do... What is this? Why is this one missing? This one just has one less. Yeah, so I think what we're going to do is ultimately just bring this down and axe all of these styles in favor of these new ones. And I think after all of these new ones, we are just going to drop the 2s off of their name. So I think that's the game plan. Okay, so let's go through and get these guys updated. Let me double check here real quick because I know there was a couple comments on this pull request, and it's been so long since I made them. What was I thinking? Several of these styles are being based off the old hyperlink style. That's going to end up being less of a problem because this is body 1 rather than body 2. It's probably just a typo. We'll adjust it. I don't think it'll make a difference. And then this is drop the 2 from the name, which is a breaking change, which is what we're about to do now. And that's it. Okay, perfect. Perfect, 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 perfect. So, themes. Text block. Okay, so we need to go through, and I'm just going to clean this up. If somebody wants to go through, so there's a wonderful tool out there called, where is it? Give me the window. Xaml Styler. And I really want to love this tool. I really, really want to love this tool. Because it looks so awesome, and I've seen a lot of people do some great things with it. Because you can effectively set up the same type of like styling bits that you can do in C#. this brings that effectively into your XAML code so that we can have consistent XAML styling. And I really, really want to bring this in and just standardize up the style for all of the XAML. So if somebody wants to take a first pass at bringing this tool in, I would love that. I just honestly have not had time to look into the configuration of it and what it takes to bring it in. I just keep seeing it used and think that it looks, I like the idea of this tool. Let's put it that way. I think I like it, but I need to actually try it. And again, if somebody wants to go through and do a pull request bringing it in, I would be very happy about that. Because we have a lot of very inconsistent styling across the repository. There's probably going to be some Roslyn analyzers that I bring in just for the purpose of making things consistent and so that we get nice checking and all of that jazz. And just to make sure that we're following best practices and not, shoot ourselves in the foot. I try to do good code reviews on all the pull requests, but I am not perfect and things slip through and I don't always notice them until somebody reports a bug. So it would be better to catch them. So I just need some white space here so that I can keep track of what's going on. So we're going to lead with this. Okay, so best way to go about doing this. So this guy's going to stay here. Material design caption text block. So let's find the equivalent one down here. Material design caption text block. So that's this guy here. So I'm going to move you up just so you're in the same order and I can keep track of one to one. All right. Okay, so material design. Material design caption text block. I'm going to have to start collapsing this stuff. Too much to look at. Too much to look at. So I want to be very careful to make sure I don't accidentally delete something that's important. Because text is one of those things that you really want to make sure you get right. Okay, so this is a hyperlink. This guy here, which is using the new hyperlink style. Great. Font size 12, font size regular. So really all this guy needs to do is bring this into play. The other subtle change that came in with this is this base style that I am adding here. This guy here, this brings in some default padding, some vertical padding. This is again for that stack panel change to bring things into alignment. It also sets the foreground color. Now this isn't strictly necessary if you've set it at the window level, but the number of times forgetting to set it at the window level has bitten me is significant, and so this also just brings in some defaults for the font size and font weight. So a lot of these should align with what your defaults are already, so shouldn't be breaking anything, but just be aware that these do exist in the style. Okay, so let's see. So I think material design caption text block, design caption text block. So you go away and you go away, one down. And we'll just collapse them as we go. So material design body 1 text block. Design body 1 text block. Material design 2. Let's just take a look here. And so slight change to the font size. Still the font weight is fine. Material design. Boom. And we will bring in the based on style. Boom. And this guy here goes out the door. And you're done. Okay, so let's see, material design, body 2 text block, body 2 text block, font size, slight change, font weight, slightly different, based on this guy. This one got updated to the new hyperlink style, which is a little weird, but oh well. And that goes away. Okay. Oh, not that 2. This 2 goes away. We're going to come back and deal with the hyperlink styles at the end, I think is how we'll do it. So subheading text block. So overline, heading, headline, headline. So this is, let's see, subheading. Let's come back to you in a minute because this is apparently not one that aligns up directly. So let's try title. Subtitle, headline, headline, headline. So another one that doesn't have a direct correlation. Okay. Headline text block. So let's see. Headline 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. 24. So this is going to be mostly akin to this guy here. I don't know if this guy makes a big difference. We can just whack this. Actually, before we whack this, let's do a quick hunt for this guy. I just want to verify that the only usages are, that's not going to find it. I want to verify that the only usages in the demo project are in that typography page, because if there's anything else, we need to update these styles going forward. And the only reason this one matters is because of, oh boy, so we use this one all over the place. Okay. Oh boy. Okay, so this guy here is roughly going to line up with, let's find the one down here, because this is font size 24, which is headline 5. So we're going to put you in place here. I think what we're going to do is just update everyone to use these guys. So find results. Let's go through these guys. So find, paste, place, no, and place all. That handles 4 of them. Okay, so that handles the buttons. This one here. Paste. This guy here. Paste. And let's see, that goes away. That goes away. Home page. Paste. Now I am realizing something. It's probably worth double checking. Let's just pull this up real quick. Let's see, material design. I just want to double check and make sure before I go through and whack all of these things that I'm not. I believe I checked this before at the time this pull request was open, but again, this has been so long that I just want to make sure that we aren't shooting ourselves in the foot. So typography. Show me all of the stuff. Type scales. Got it. Okay, so this does line up with what's with these guys here. Okay. It's good to know, as long as we are all in agreement about what this is. Just want to make sure that as we move forward with this that we are actually lining up with it. Just makes for a lot of updates in here. Let's see. Expand, place all. That fixes those ones. Paste. Paste. So that handles the toggle buttons. Transition demo. Ooh, there's a bug. Static resources. So in general, when you're using styles, you want to use static resources over dynamic resources. Dynamic resources are used for things like brushes and colors, things that might actually update at runtime. In general, you don't have styles with their reference changing at runtime. Now there may be triggers and whatnot in them that may change stuff at runtime, but in general the style reference itself will not be. So you almost never want dynamic resource on your style setters. Those should almost always be static resources. Because static resources are significantly more performant because they don't have to keep track of the change notifications. So they are much faster. Boy, I'm hoping this is the last of these guys to whack. But while we're in here, we're gonna keep cleaning this stuff up. Always try to follow the Boy Scout rule and leave the code cleaner than when you found it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but should be at least as clean as you found it. There's always that judgment call of how much editing and refactoring work do you do? And given that this is a major release and I can make breaking changes, I'm trying to do a lot. So I apologize for everyone who I'm generating work for. I am very conscious of the fact that every change that I make here probably adds some amount of time. Never did finish that demo out. Add that to my list. Things that should happen. So this is the typography page. I think I'm going to ignore those ones there. Actually, you know what I should do? No, because ultimately what we're going to do is we're going to whack all of these. So that's not a big deal. We're going to ignore the typography page. And then this guy here only exists here. So you now go away. One less thing here. Okay, so let's see. Display text block. So these ones, so I think title probably needs to change to headline 6. I think that's, so let's just get rid of all these 2s here real quick. I don't really want material design 2 anywhere in these names because it's not really material design 2. Google just sort of said, here's an update. And we're not versioning our design stuff, which makes sense. Okay, material design button text block 14 medium. Design 14 medium. So you just go away. So you're easy. And this guy here should be updated because this goes from title text block, and you're a 20 and a medium, 20 medium, so you should really be updated to material design heading 6. So let's hunt you down. So I suspect this is going to be another one that is very much used. Put you there. Oh yeah, just a couple references. Excellent. I was worried it would be easy. Okay, so that goes there. That goes there. That goes there. You know what, real quick, before I forget about this, I'm going to put a comment on this guy, just so I can, actually let's go back to the 3.0 breaking changes one. And I just want to put comments on here of all of the stuff that's breaking. So let's see here. So this is going to be already done. Design title text block. Material design title text block. There's that one. And let's just check and put the other one in, just so that I've got a good log of all of these changes that are going through. I'm sure it's in this buttons page as well. Let's see here. This guy needs to be changed to update. Okay, and back to hunting. Paste. It's that one. Great. And once again, oop, I missed a couple here. Static resource. Is that really? Hold up. That doesn't look right to me. Did I just change the wrong one? Let's do... Yeah, this should be a 6, not a 5. Oops. 6. You should be 6, not 5. Okay. While I'm in here, static resource, just because I see them and I don't want to deal with them later. Okay. Trees. Paste, replace all. 5 of those guys are gone. Typography we're not going to deal with. And then this is the original. Okay, so this guy now goes away. Okay. Let's deal with the subheading one, I guess, next. 15 and regular. Just probably subtitle 1. So before I get too carried away, back over to here, more edits. And these are in no particular order. They're just in whatever order I decide to do these in. So that guy there, let's see, we said 15 regular. It's going to be this guy here. And again, these aren't perfect matches. So if you notice that things still don't quite line up, it is worth double checking what the old resources were. For example, this is going from a font size 15 to a 16. And that is like, usually a single point isn't a lot, but you know, if you've got something where you've spent a lot of time getting a pixel perfect design, things are going to look different. So, one second. This is definitely a second Mountain Dew problem. Okay. So this guy here needs to be hunted and replaced with this guy. So once again, hunt the solution for it. And you on the clipboard. Oh boy. And once again, I'm seeing a bunch of dynamic resources. Not good, not good. Okay, so there. Cards is done. This guy here. See, find, paste, replace all. Great. Done with all. Done with that file. Group boxes. Normally I'd do a blind find and replace all and just check the diff, but in this case I think there's too many extra little things that I'm wanting to just kind of spot check as I open these files. So, and there's not a lot of these styles to replace. This is filled with dynamic resources. Not good, not good. I know a lot of people tend to copy and paste the code that they see in the example app, and I try to make sure that the example app is reasonable solutions, but it is worth noting that even though the sample app may be reasonable solutions, it's not structured the way that I would tell anyone to structure their own app. The demo app is really designed to show the breadth of what's possible. For example, it mixes code behind an MVVM, and I would never advocate that you mix. You can certainly build WPF apps both ways, but mixing and matching usually starts to cause some amount of problems, and so I would argue that you should probably favor one over the other and not just blind copy and paste all of the samples out of here. We got one right, and most of them are dynamic. Okay, so all of those, man, this is one of those changes that I am very, very confident is going to cause a ton of merge conflicts for me in the future. That is okay, because at least if all of these things are static resources, it means that any botched merges will be very obvious. So typography we're ignoring for now. Now we're back to the original. This guy is now done. Okay. Gets us a little bit closer, So these display text ones, these are interesting. I believe, so let's jump back here real quick to the type system. Display text. This is weird. I don't understand why we would have 4 levels of display text, because there's clearly, let's see, especially with like font size 45, these have to be originally used for headings. Yeah, font size 112, that has to be a heading. There's no way. Those should translate to these. Okay, so we're just going to convert these, I believe, straight into headings. So I think we're going to collapse all of these, and then collapse that, and that's fine. Okay, so let's start at the top and just keep going through this. This is display 1. Or maybe we should start with display 4 and work backwards, because I think display 4 is probably going to be the biggest. Yeah, let's start here and work backwards. So this guy here, and back to breaking change list, edit, and I should probably just leave the edit window open since I know I've got 4 of these coming. So this guy here is going to get translated to this. Okay, so that on the clipboard, and search for all usages. Hopefully not many. Some of these I don't think are used good, just in the typography styles, which we know we're about to whack, so don't care anymore. Go away. Okay, next. Text 356, so I assume this is going to be heading 2. Those are pretty close. So we will take a note that this one is also there's that. Let's see, so this shows 56 in regular versus 60 in light. Okay, that was 3, right? 3 into 2. It's also weird that the numbering of this is switching order. But, okay, great. So let's hunt this guy down now. Once again, I think a lot of these particular ones are probably not used much throughout the demo app. So I suspect it'll just be the typography changes. Yep, so you can go away. So I'm going to assume that you just happen to line up. 45, 48, regular. Yep. So there, those line up. Great, great, great. Do another search. Find all. Ooh, looks like this one is used. Okay. Let's grab you. Copy. Paste. And let's see, so that's icon pack. Paste. And typography page we don't care about, so just those 2 usages. Great. Kill you off. I think this is going to be the last one. So display 34, 34, regular, regular. Oh. Love it when things just line up nicely. So let's see here. This guy comes there. Display 1 becomes headline 4. I'll just go update. And let's hunt usages of you real quick. See if there's anything out there. Then I think we just update the typography page, and then I think we can probably take this. Oh, there are usages. Hooky. So paste. Oop. Not what we wanted. Not what I wanted. And then typography page. Okay. Oh, we got to do the hyperlink stuff real quick too. So this guy here, and we can kill the comment off. I can kill this comment off. Okay, and that should get us pretty close. Okay, let's deal with the hyperlink, I guess. And that is up here. And once again, I'm just going to put some white space in so that I can see what's going on. Because I like at least a little line in here. And I think for the most part on all of these, we just are going to just do a rename and take the new ones wholesale. And I think all of these changes should be boom. Okay, so let's see, material design body 1 hyperlink. Body 1 hyperlink. UDoc over here, because I'm wondering if there's a naming thing that should be done as part of this as well, because these hyperlinks should probably line up with the corresponding text block that they go with. Body 1 hyperlink. Body 1 hyperlink. And let's see here. That seems fine. Save and save. Let's go back up here. Let's just hunt it real quick. I don't expect to find, outside of those two that we just did, I don't expect to find a lot of these hyperlink styles used explicitly. So I'm not really interested in usages inside of these files. Let's see, typography page we're about to just wholesale do. Hyperlink page we're about to wholesale do. Text block we've already redone. So this guy goes away. Excellent. Let's see. Captions hyperlink. Caption hyperlink. I think we just turn you off. Turn you off. I'm going to just move these up so that they stay in the same order. Oh no, I see why it's down here. Well, here's what we're going to do. I understand keeping the two body ones together, but let's move the... Oh no, it really should be down below. Never mind, it's not worth it. Not worth it. I was just trying to make the order of these two match, and I don't think it is worth the effort that it's going to cause me. So, quick search, make sure he's unused. And because the names of all of these change, it's not necessarily going to break you outside of the fact that things are going to look a little different. Okay. Again, I don't really expect to find these hyperlink styles directly referenced out in the wild anywhere. So you're done. Okay, body 2 hyperlink. Let's just verify that you are not used anywhere. Yep, not outside of where we care, so you go away. Let's see, body 2, this guy here, material design 2, body 2 hyperlink, material design, boom. Body 1 hyperlink. I just realized I need to be double checking these based on ones. I don't think it's a big deal because I think most of these are going to shell into this one. I do wonder about the idea of making a generic hyperlink base style that doesn't contain the font size, rather than having all of these things reference this and reset it, whatever. Not worth dealing with at the moment. Okay, so there's caption, that's done. Subheading. Again, for a lot of these I expect them to just be dead. Okay. You know what, while I'm here I might just hunt these and verify that none of these exist, because I can probably just wholesale delete most of these guys. Yep. Because I do think that the vast majority of these hyperlink styles were probably never directly referenced and only implicitly used as part of the text block styles. So this change, I am planning on getting this change checked in and merged tonight, so sometime in the next 12-ish hours you should see an updated NuGet package with all of these changes in there. So if you want to start updating, you are welcome to do so. It is worth noting one of the other major changes, and I don't think I've got an issue logged for it yet, is I need to go through the Ma apps integration library and start dealing with all of the brush changes that they did there. As part of the 2.0 release, Ma apps has standardized on a lot of their brush names, which is great. Makes it much easier to find them and track them down. The problem is we're still referencing all of the old brush names. And so figuring out what those mappings are and what needs to happen there is going to be necessary. So I don't know if anybody feels up to the task of running through on the Ma apps 2.0 stuff. Don't feel like you can break it because it's already in a broken state. So if you want to deal with getting those updated, that would be awesome. Because the plan will be updating to Ma apps 2.0 with the next version of the integration library. So just be aware that that will be coming. Okay, so let's see. Overline hyperlink. This guy here should be that. Great. Material design. Subtitle 1 hyperlink. Boom. Material design subtitle 2 hyperlink. And hopefully this does make it a little bit easier for everybody to actually make use of this. I know I struggle to remember all of these text styles in my own apps, and so I think part of it was the original style names were somewhat confusing. Headline 6 hyperlink. And so hopefully this brings everything together. Let's see here. So this is going to be 5. Just shift you over just a hair. I think that'll make my life a little bit easier. Great. Material design. Boom. I don't have a... Is there a way I can get you to sit just perfect? Just about like that. Let's see. Headline 4 hyperlink. Let's see, Marrow design. Whack the 2. Great. Great, great, great. Wrong button. 3. Whack the 2. Great. On 2. Let's see. This is now on 2. This guy here works. Great. And then headline 1. Headline 1. Okay, so that handles all of that. So let's go back up to the demo app and fix the typography page. Make sure it all still works. So let's just bring you guys together. So typography page. So we've got just a couple row definitions. Okay, now let's go through. So the goal will be, I'm ultimately looking to just whack all of the old styles. So I think, just do this. Just get rid of all the old ones, because I don't really care to keep them around. Let's see, that goes away. That goes away. Now here's the interesting part, is we've got all of these row definitions. Now I don't actually have to delete them just yet. I do wonder, autocode button? Oh no, no. ReSharper has a wonderful autocode button that can nuke out these definitions, and then it automatically goes through and updates all of these values for you, which would be so nice right about now. Okay, so let's just start with this and make sure it actually compiles and runs, because I think this will actually get it pretty close. And I think this will get it, if this gets this done, this can be the last of the breaking changes going out the door. Oh, hey Magnus. And by last of breaking changes, I mean the last one I can think of before I go and break something else. It's not good when I have access to a major release like this. It means I just want to break everything. Okay, and that goes there. Great, 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 great. Wonderful. Because then it'll just be a matter of whacking the appropriate row definitions and then updating all of these. I was a little curious if this text is correct on all of them. I think it probably is. Oh, nope. This is going to all break. This is going to all break. We need to replace everywhere where we have material design 2 with just straight up material design, because we whacked all of those 2s. So replace all. Great. Okay, now try it. That'll get it a lot closer. And though it's not strictly necessary, I probably want to go through and update these keys on the Xaml displays, because it doesn't really matter what these keys are, they just have to be unique. So, you know what, it actually It's kind of convenient, the fact that this starts from 101. May not find necessarily the need to go through and change them all. And I'll probably remove this heading as well. That's just the new styles updated, because I don't know if that's really adding any value. Because again, the expectation should be that this stuff matches the latest material design spec. Hey, cool, Magnus. I'll have the recording up probably in the next like 12 hours on YouTube too. I did spend the first little bit going through Paket versus NuGet, if you are interested. So when you get a chance to listen, let me know, and if there's any further questions or stuff that you want me to cover, happy to go back and revisit it. Look at that, and it all just works. All just works. Okay, real quick, I'm just going to pull up the spec again real quick, and I'm going to put it on my second monitor. Just want to real quick spot check all of these sizes: 96, 60, 48, 34, 24, 20, 16, 14. Let's see, body. Hold on. So where do we got? Subtitle 2 should be 14. Subtitle 2 is 14, and then it goes body 1 is 16. Body 2 is 14. Let's see, button should be all caps and 14. Great. Caption should be 12. Caption is 12. And overline is 10. Excellent, 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 excellent. All of those line up and actually look correct. Sweet. Okay, so let's clean this page up now that it actually runs. Okay, so I think we can whack the first 11 rows. So let's see. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So those ones all go away. So this now downgrades to there. 11. Let's see. Let me just check that real quick. I've already lost my count. So wait, why are you in the same row? Oh, I see. This is going across. This is different columns. Got it. So that needs to be a 0. This needs to be a 0. This needs to be a 0. Got it, got it, got it, got it, got it, got it. So then 13 becomes a 1. Actually, let's do this a little smarter. Let's see. So 13 becomes grid row 1. Place all. I think we can do this. 14 becomes a 2. Place all. There, that's a little easier. 15. Come on. Comes a 3. Replace all. 16 comes 4, replace all. Let's see, shift tab. And 5, replace all. 18. Lost my spot. 6, replace all. 19, 7. 28, 21, 9, 22, 10, 23, 11, 24, 12. Okay. that gets us pretty much the whole way there. I'm less concerned with updating these style keys, but let's make sure this thing still lays out correctly, and we should be good to go. And we will be done with outstanding 3.0 pull requests. Woot woot! And I think this is the last of the major breaking changes. I was trying to get all of these breaking changes in soonish, so that people who are willing to play with the preview NuGet packages can hopefully absorb them and tell me all of the stuff that I broke. So I think, come on, go Visual Studio. I will say, it has been operating much faster for me without ReSharper installed. It's so hard to give it up, though. I really like all the productivity stuff. I think the solution is just a faster computer. Okay. That looks right to me. Looks like everything laid out correctly. And the show me the XAML stuff seems to be working correctly. Great. Okay. We are going to push it. So let's see. So stage all changes. Updated all existing. Text block styles to new spec. Fixes breaking changes in 1301, which I'm getting way too familiar with. So let's see, commit changes, and because we rebased on the or rebased the old pull request, it's going to require a force push. That's okay. We can do it. Because the wonderful default setting in GitHub is to give me access to push to any fork, which is great. Okay, so we'll let the CI system chug on that for a minute, and then let's see. Let's label this guy up. So enhancement, it's already labeled to go into 301, and this should bring this here. I was hoping that this thing would. Let me refresh this page. I was hoping that commit comment would. Oh, good. Added a commit. Good. I just wanted to make sure that it actually did get picked up in here. And has a link back across. I don't want it to actually close this issue, but I do want to have it linked. Okay, sweet. So we'll let that guy chug for a minute. Let's see here. So some controls in my apps demo only show right color after palette change. This is probably somewhat related to getting some of those brushes correct. So I'm a little less concerned with that. Warning using card with progress bar. Oh, that's right. And this was that unmanaged font issue that actually you had brought up, Magnus. I think. I'm not entirely sure the best way to go about doing this. Because I think the solution that we were going to go with is just document it, because I don't know a great way to be able to handle this. Because I don't want to necessarily add the font file as a content and an embedded resource, because that just ends up doubling over the size, and the size of the NuGet package is already significantly large, and a good portion of that does come from the embedded font inside of it. Yeah, takes care of writing temporary font files to disk before loading. Yeah, I guess I'm not opposed to your suggestion of going with the static initializer. Yeah, I think I like your suggestion. I think actually doing all of the above is the correct answer. So, wiki page, document it, and then we will go through and do a material design font. So this thing needs some labels. So first of all, wiki changes. I'm going to label it as a bug. Even though it's a WPF based bug, it still feels like a bug. And that's good enough for now. Okay, so let's the big question is, where do we write the font file out to? Because we can't assume that we can write to the running location of the application, because that sometimes will work and sometimes won't. So specifically Windows 7 and 8 machines, if somebody's running one of those still, the program files directory, if somebody were to install there, you won't have write access to. Now there's some magic virtualization that happens, so that if an older program is installed into like C program files and tries to write to its current running directory, it gets redirected to another folder whose path I can't remember right now. And so the operating system lies to the program and says, oh yeah, I wrote that into the same directory, and instead puts it somewhere else. Specifically puts it in a user folder, even though the program thinks it's writing to a global folder. I think we probably just have to write this inside. I'm trying to decide though, if we write the temp file, how do we know when to clean it up? We really don't. We really don't. And that would be the tough one, is when do you, if you write a temporary file to store the font file, like we could write it into the temp directory, we wouldn't necessarily want to write the file anew every single time. I wonder if we don't have to clean it up. I wonder if that's a problem. Because I'm wondering if we simply write out, the file and use it. The question then also comes with versioning, because I don't necessarily think a file exists check is sufficient unless we encode the version number in to the file. And if we encode the version number into the file, which version number? This is hard, because I do like this idea of having a type that goes through. Let's just kind of prototype this out real quick. So we'll switch back to master. Let's prototype this out a little bit. So let's see, create branch, fix, and 746, right? Okay, so let's just play with this for a minute. So if we did something like this, this ends up coming over here. So add new class, material, design, fonts. So I think what we do is we go public static class, clean up the usings please, thank you, static, material, design fonts. Let's see, because you had a bunch of stuff here. See, and this works under the premise that the font file can be written in the app domain's base directory, which I don't think we can make this assumption. Again, if somebody uses this on a on an app that gets installed inside of like C program files, we won't necessarily have write access. Let's see. Come on, I know. Let's see, Windows Media. Let's see, System I/O. System. So I'm not entirely sure I can trust this. Clean up trailing white space for me. You know, I'm wondering if maybe I'm overthinking this problem just a tad too much. Let's take a look. What is actually on font family? There's not a lot. Family maps, typeface, line spacing, source. Yuck. Yuck, 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 yuck. I also don't like this. I prefer to see that let that get combined all the way through. Boy, because it current domain base directory. I'm wondering if maybe I just allow it to be configured. I'm wondering if maybe we go this route. So font file goes like this, and then maybe something up here like this. Private, static, read only. We'll take advantage of lazy. Font family. And then this becomes Bato.value. spelling counts, something about like that, and then gets new lazy font family. That, something like that, and then this becomes font file. That way it effectively goes and looks it up later. Just not sure if current domain base directory is a good spot to do it. I'm somewhat tempted to write it into the temp directory. But this also allows someone to come through and override the font file path if they want, because accessing this static property will trigger the static constructor, which will set it to a default value, and then this guy will only be looked up at the point where the person goes and asks for the font. Let's go back here. So this is pretty close. So this works, but only if the font is added and copied to the output directory. Add the fonts with the build action, copy to output directory. Let's see, and then this changes to this guy to use the static instance. Okay. Keep the font as a resource in the library. I am wondering, because an alternate option here would be to not necessarily write the file ourselves, but simply check for the existence of the file. I might have to think about that. Because something that we could do is we could have the font file set up as with different options inside of the NuGet package. So, for example, something that we could theoretically enable, and this gets a little bit easier with the newer CS proj, but something like material, design, font. So we effectively create our own property, and maybe we give it a value of embedded. And so if you set it to embedded, you get the current behavior. You could have one for resource. And if somebody were to set this property to a resource, it would then copy to the output directory. That would then mean that this guy here, what I would end up doing is just something like throw if file doesn't exist, you know, include message to set project variable. I'm wondering if that might be a cleaner option, because then We could default that value to embedded to keep the existing functionality. Not that I'm overly concerned with backwards compatibility right now, but at least then it would match the existing docs. And then if people wanted to change it from embedded to resource, they could. I'm kind of liking that option, because then we don't have to have effectively either 2 copies or having this guy write a file. Because if somebody wants to use it as a resource, we really want them to have it as a build resource so that it ends up in the output directory and gets distributed alongside of the application. And then that would allow us to make some assumptions like this, where we assume appropriate subdirectories. Kind of like that option. I think I like that option. That does mean I don't think right now we don't have any targets files. Well, this targets file. But we don't have any magical targets files for the NuGet. So basically the key here, let me pull one of my other libraries real quick. With NuGet, there is some magical files that you can put inside of your NuGet package. So, for example, oh, this, I think it's under my NuGet folder. Nope, not there. Must be in the project directory. If you create a target file that matches the name of your NuGet package ID, and you put it underneath the content folder, I believe, this target file will automatically get referenced by the CS Proj and allow you to inject as part of the MS build pipeline. So this effectively gives you the ability to have, say, variables and default them to whatever you want the default to be if it hasn't been set yet. So it gives us sort of the ability to go through and make sure that we have a nice default and then change up the way that font file is referenced. Though the one thing it doesn't do for us because if somebody were to use the font file as we effectively have to compile the library with the font file embedded to have that as an option. And we could also optionally include it as a resource, but that means we've effectively doubled our size. What is the size of this file exactly? Roberto Google Fonts. Let's just look, because if my memory is correct, this font file is not necessarily insignificant in size. Select this font. How I would like to download. One font family selected. Your selection, blah blah blah. Download. So how big exactly are you? How big is this file? Yeah, so each of these guys here are several hundred K a piece. It would be nice. It would be very nice if these didn't have to be embedded as part of the assembly. Maybe we turn off the embedded font. That's another option. We take that away. Because again, when we initially did this, the idea was we didn't want to break backwards compatibility, but right now we do have the ability to break those changes. It does mean that everyone who's currently referencing the docs and following the startup directions is going to be wrong. because it's effectively doing this with the pack URI. But we could get away with adding it. So the changes here, where it effectively adds all of these files with this appropriate build action, we don't need somebody to add this to their project. We could add it as part of the NuGet. Maybe that's the better option, because we could handle this via the NuGet. We could then cut down our font size. Yeah, I may try doing this. I think perhaps if we go with the backwards compatibility, or just say that we're going to abandon backwards compatibility for existing people and force them to switch to using the static reference for the font. I think that's probably better to avoid the memory leak. Especially if we can handle the setup for them as part of the NuGet package. Oh, other pull request finished. Wonderful. Squash and merge, please. Go, go, go. Let's just make sure it didn't close this issue on me. So I want to make sure this guy stays open for now. Wonderful. I think that might be the way that I'm thinking we go on this one, Magnus, is we'll break backwards compatibility so that static resources, or so the static resource material design font is no longer valid, and assume everybody will reference it with xstatic, and we'll create a material design fonts Roboto and just expect people to reference it that way. I think I like that option. I think I like that option best because it'll also significantly cut down the size of our DLL, and then if somebody wants to distribute their app without needing to all of the font files, they can then decide which font files they want to distribute. Because then if the font files don't exist, we'll just carry on, fat, dumb, and happy, and kick back a null, and the fonts will just fail to resolve if somebody doesn't distribute the font files along with the app, the same way as if somebody failed to distribute the font files along with, if somebody fails to distribute the DLLs along with their app. Except for we won't crash, we'll just carry along without switching the fonts out. I think that's the way we're going to go. But it is also 11 p.m. for me, and I unfortunately have work in the morning. So I think that is probably where I'm going to end tonight. Probably pick up this font family one, hopefully during the middle of the week. We'll see. Again, next week my plan is to start off the stream largely covering the basics of Git with pull requests and merging and rebasing and branches and all of that fun, just so that people can be up to speed if they want to participate in Hacktoberfest. So we will start there, and then I will probably circle back around to more material design stuff. But it does feel good getting this guy down. Pull requests are now in single digits. Yes! Slowly but surely. Getting all of these guys off the radar. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight and happy coding. Again, if people have feedback or questions or stuff that they would like me to cover or talk about, I am always happy to take requests. And I will see everyone again next week. Talk to you guys later.